I wanted to carry on the conversation about the impact of leaving a religion or faith and the conditioning that stays with you when you leave a religion you've grown up, especially when you enter so-called real world and you've come out of a religious environment, a very strict religious environment, and you suddenly realise how ill-equipped you actually are to live in the real world, and that this service that's happened to you, because it's like you were handed a computer from the 90s and told to run today's software. You're just operating on an outdated system that is incapable of keeping up. So that's kind of the belief framework we were given and taught, that's made us actually be stuck in Middle Ages practically, while the rest of the world's just moved on. And that's kind of the analogy I thought of, because it does feel very much like having been plucked out of Middle Ages and put into 2025 or whatever year, because you have this naivety, you just believe what people say because you were taught to never lie. You offer help freely, and you trust that people will appreciate you and value you because you were raised to serve, and you've got these so-called Christ-like principles, and you assume people are who they present themselves to be, because you would never think of that someone could go on for ages pretending to be something they're not, or pretending to like you when they don't, and you're left with wow, I never saw that coming. And that's not something as a ex-evangelical fundamental Christianity you were ever taught to. You just taught to be as pure as possible, that you have to be Christ-like, so-called, because the Christianity that teaches you've got to turn the other cheek. One slaps you, you just turn the other one, slap me again. You have to put others first, You always admit your faults, whether you're at fault or not. You're the sinner. You have to always tell the truth. So, of course, people end up taking advantage of that, because, when someone tells you something, you believe them. And why wouldn't you? Especially in the beginning, but, I think it always stays that naive trust, that because that's the code you were programmed to believe that you're lived by, being honest, being loyal, have integrity. But in this real world, because it's moved on, that code just gets you hurt and get used and discarded. And then you enter the real world with this, it's almost like this childlike, honest expectations of, what the world is like. You can't quite comprehend it, when you start finding out that not everyone has integrity, that, you think when people give you their word about something, or they tell you something, and you take that as a fact, when in reality, it's not a fact. It's just something they said, but they didn't mean it. And not everyone values loyalty. In fact, in this day and age, it's a very disposable culture. Some people will take everything you give them quite happily, and they'll still walk away without looking back. And they won't think about that they left you in a gutter, because they got everything they needed out of you. And that is the consequence of these Christian beliefs that you once held and you were indoctrinated with. Because it's from a Bible, this book that's 2,000 years old. It's ridiculous. You're living by a book that is 2,000 years old. And the most painful awakening is when you realise you have absolutely no tools, no equipment to deal in the real world, or be able to tell, like, if someone's pretending to love you whilst they stab you in the back, who's the real deal, what's the real deal, who you can, like, open up to, or who's gonna, like, just throw you under the bus, having connections you think are real, but then you find out they're not real, and, having your reputation damaged, or getting, being told lies about you, or half-truths, and then you're the fool because you trusted, because you loved too much, you gave too much, and it was, you just easy. And I think that's not something that's very often talked about, that this cost of religious conditioning, this cost of having these beliefs when you actually become part of the real environment, the real world. You're not in this small little religious evangelical Christian organisation. And kind of philosophically, spiritually speaking, I've been wondering whether, like the saying about truth will set you free. What if that truth that sets you free is actually the learning of honouring each person's journey and the purpose and the lessons? Because as Christians, we were taught we need to save people. We need to fix them. We need to fix their lives, and we're not allowing their purpose, their lessons, with the impact they need to learn life. And by stepping in and helping and protecting people, protecting their secrets, being the run around and do it all, and maybe that's the wrong thing to do, because we are not allowing life to flow through other people and their soul's original purpose. Maybe the soul wants to do this. That's the intention. This is when they need to be. Who are we to step in and rescue? Because, end of the day, when we step between someone and their karma, we'll actually get their karma. We'll end up being at the receiving end of it. And a lot of people, like, they won't even, they'll avoid you, and they'll have someone else, they'll just discard you, and they'll even have someone else write their messages for them because they don't want to deal with you directly anymore, because you've served your purpose. And I guess you just need to let them make those choices, and that's allowing people to live their own path, not forcing or asking or begging or proving and lecturing, because it is not our place to do so, and to try and get anyone to stay where they no longer want to be, and, in trying to fix, rescue and prescribe when they don't want it. And you just think you're doing what's best, you're doing the right thing, but in reality, you're just reliving your conditioning of being a saviour, when really you need to allow people to live the consequences of their own decisions, not shield anymore, letting the truth come out, letting karma do its work, letting people walk their path. It's just one of those things where, deconstructing isn't about just questioning doctrines, it's about dismantling the rescuer role. It's releasing what needs to be released, so we're not a fixer anymore, but we open the space for people to walk their own path.